You believe the Nazirite vow was simply a sign of extreme piety, perhaps an admirable, if peculiar, act of devotion. You are mistaken. Far from a mere demonstration of spiritual zeal, the Nazirite vow was a profound and terrifying immersion into a state of sacred, almost alien, separation. A radical transformation that demanded total surrender, not just of habit, but of identity itself, pulling you from the very fabric of human society into an ethereal, isolated devotion. Imagine yourself in the sun-baked dust of ancient Israel, the cacophony of the marketplace fading as your gaze falls upon a solitary figure. Their hair, long and unkempt, flows in the desert wind, a living testament to an unspoken commitment. Their eyes hold a depth of withdrawal, a quiet intensity that sets them apart from the bustling crowd. They do not share in the village wine, they do not mourn with those who weep over their dead, nor do they touch the earth that holds their ancestors. This is not just a choice. It is a sacred decree, an ordeal of purification that transcends conventional understanding, leaving you to ponder. Was this an ultimate expression of divine love or a formidable, almost inhuman burden? So, as we prepare to uncover these timeless truths, if you find value in this journey, consider leaving a like to support the channel. It makes a huge difference. Share your own insights on this profound mystery in the comments below. Now, still your heart and open your mind. The veil of history is about to be torn away. Our revelation begins. The divine mandate for the Nazirite, as laid out in the sacred texts of Numbers chapter 6, was not a suggestion or a temporary custom, but a covenantal instruction, a path forged in the very fires of Sinai. You witness, through the ancient scrolls, the moment Moses is given this profound knowledge, articulating the requirements for any man or woman who separates himself to make a vow of a Nazirite, to separate himself to the Lord. This was a voluntary act, a conscious decision to enter a state of heightened sanctity, transcending the common Israelite and even, in some respects, mirroring the consecrated state of the priest. The very essence of the vow was separation, the Hebrew root nazar meaning to dedicate, to consecrate, to stand apart. It was a visible, tangible declaration of a profound inner commitment, a living prayer etched into the very being of the one who swore it. You are asked to consider what it truly meant for an ordinary individual to willingly step into such an extraordinary existence, to consciously choose a life that was, by divine decree, unlike any other. The first and perhaps most striking prohibition was the abstinence from all products of the vine. You are explicitly forbidden from wine, strong drink, vinegar made from wine, or vinegar made from strong drink. Even the consumption of fresh grapes or dried grapes, grape seeds, or even the skins of the grape was strictly prohibited. This was more than a temperance movement. It was a symbolic rejection of worldly pleasures and the intoxicating influences that could cloud one's spiritual clarity. Wine in the ancient world was ubiquitous, a staple of every meal, a symbol of joy and celebration, a common thread woven through daily life and religious festivals. To renounce it utterly was to set oneself apart from common fellowship, to sever a fundamental connection to merriment and routine consumption. You are forced to imagine the social implications. The Nazirite could not participate in the joyful feasts, the communal toasts, the very fabric of shared humanity that revolved around the breaking of bread and the pouring of wine. Their very presence at a gathering would serve as a constant, stark reminder of their unique, unyielding commitment, a living sermon on self-denial and spiritual discipline. The second, and perhaps visually most arresting, component of the Nazirite vow was the prohibition against cutting the hair of the head. For the entire duration of their separation, no razor shall come upon his head. This unkempt, flowing mane was not a fashion statement, but the growth of the hair of his head is holy to the Lord. It was a crown of consecration, a visible sign of their dedication, a living anointing of their commitment. In a society where neatness and order were prized, and short hair was often a sign of a free man, the Nazirite's wild, unshorn hair would have been an unmistakable mark. It symbolized untamed devotion, a letting go of societal norms and personal vanity in favor of a raw, primal connection to the divine. It was a tangible representation of a life dedicated, not to human standards of beauty or conformity, but to a higher, unseen power. You are compelled to consider the audacity of such a public declaration, marking oneself so distinctly. inviting scrutiny and perhaps even awe or bewilderment from those around you. The hair, accumulating over months or years, became a physical manifestation of the passage of time dedicated wholly to God, a growing banner of their vow. Perhaps the most stringent and existentially challenging aspect of the Nazirite vow was the absolute prohibition against defilement by a dead body. He shall not make himself unclean by coming near to a dead body, the text explicitly states, extending this rule even to the death of his own father, mother, brother, or sister. This commandment severed the Nazirite from the most fundamental human experiences of sorrow, grief, and family duty. In the ancient world, tending to the dead, participating in mourning rituals, and burying one's kin were sacred obligations, deeply ingrained in the cultural and spiritual fabric of society. To be forbidden from attending the funeral of a beloved parent or sibling was a profound sacrifice, an emotional amputation that tested the very limits of human endurance and devotion. It meant prioritizing ritual purity and divine separation above the primal bonds of kinship and the universal human need to grieve. You are forced to confront the chilling reality. The Nazirite was, in this singular instance, more aligned with the high priest, who also bore this restriction, than with the common Israelite. This elevates the Nazirite to a unique, almost sacred status, embodying a portable sanctuary, a living vessel of purity that must remain untainted by the shadow of death. This was not merely a physical separation, but a psychological and emotional detachment from the most profound and universal human experiences. Beyond the stark commands of Numbers, rabbinic traditions and ancient commentaries illuminate the profound weight and societal perception of the Nazirite vow. While the biblical text primarily details a temporary vow, which concluded with a ritual sacrifice and the shaving of the hair, history records individuals like Samson, Samuel. Though his Nazirite status is debated, he embodied many characteristics from birth, and John the Baptist, whose vows were lifelong. Josephus, the Jewish historian, recounts instances where individuals, perhaps facing illness or seeking atonement, would take a Nazirite vow for a specified period, emphasizing that though the core prohibitions remained, the duration was often a personal choice. You learn that the Nazirite was not an outcast, but often revered, seen as walking a path of heightened sanctity, a living embodiment of personal holiness. Yet there were also warnings. Some rabbinic interpretation, while acknowledging the purity of the vow, cautioned against excessive asceticism, questioning whether such extreme separation truly brought one closer to God or merely distanced them from the community, creating a sense of isolation rather than true communion. It was a delicate balance between righteous devotion and potentially self-imposed spiritual exile. You are left to ponder the true nature of the holiness demanded by God. Was it solely an outward adherence to stricture, or did it require a deeper, internal transformation that could transcend even the most rigid external practices? This leads you to a profound, soul-searching question that has echoed down the corridors of time. Is the Nazirite vow, with its stringent demands for physical separation and abstinence, truly an act of superior devotion? Or is it a sacred burden that distances the individual not only from the world, but paradoxically, from understanding the very human condition that God also created? If holiness requires such extreme self-denial and the severing of natural human bonds, how then does one reconcile a God who also created family, joy, and the very grape from which wine is made? You are compelled to wrestle with the essence of what it means to be truly set apart for the divine. Is it a path of ultimate spiritual ascension, a direct line to communion with the Almighty, or does it represent an almost unattainable ideal, a test of human limits that few could truly sustain without profound psychological and emotional cost? For centuries, the faithful have wrestled with the question of whether true spiritual enlightenment demands such a rigid separation from the common human experience, or if instead it is found within the tapestry of everyday life, permeated by intention and reverence. The Nazirite, standing apart, forces you to confront the very definition of consecrated living. The Nazirite vow, therefore, was not merely a set of rules. It was a conduit, a vessel designed to contain and channel divine power, demanding unwavering purity as its price. But what happens when that sacred vessel is defiled? When the covenant is broken, not by an external force, but by the very one who swore the oath? You are about to witness the catastrophic unraveling of such a pact, a story burned into the annals of sacred history. The tragedy of Samson. Born under a prophetic pronouncement, Samson was a Nazirite from birth, set apart to God from the womb. His hair, untouched by razor, was not merely a symbol of devotion, but the very seat of his superhuman strength, a divine endowment that allowed him to tear lions apart with his bare hands, to slaughter 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey, and to rip the gates of Gaza from their hinges. His life was a living testament to the awe-inspiring power that flowed through one consecrated to the Most High. Yet, his story is not one of unwavering devotion, but of a fatal flaw, a devastating surrender to temptation that challenges the very notion of spiritual fortitude. You are forced to confront the chilling truth. Even the greatest anointing can be undone by human weakness, and the consequences of violating a sacred vow are not merely spiritual, but profoundly, terrifyingly physical. The narrative of Samson, recorded in the book of Judges, is a stark parable of power and peril. From his youth, you witness his repeated transgressions against the spirit of his Nazirite vow, even if not always the letter. While he abstained from wine and cutting his hair, his fatal attraction to Philistine women consistently led him into morally ambiguous situations that defied the expected separation of a Nazirite. When he killed a lion, he later returned to find a beehive within its carcass and ate the honey, implicitly touching a dead body, a direct violation, even if it was not a human corpse. You are compelled to see this as a gradual erosion of his sacred boundaries, a slow creep of compromise that foreshadowed his eventual downfall. This progressive defilement, often overlooked in the dramatic retelling of his feats, was a foundational flaw, weakening the very spiritual edifice of his vow. Josephus, in his Antiquities of the Jews, describes Samson's strength as directly linked to his Nazirite status, portraying him as a figure of immense physical prowess, but also profound moral blindness, often driven by his passions rather than divine guidance. This lost context from external histories reinforces the biblical narrative, emphasizing that Samson's power was not inherent but contingent upon his covenantal faithfulness. The ultimate betrayal came at the hands of Delilah, a Philistine woman whose insidious cunning proved more formidable than any army. You witnessed, through the ancient narrative, her relentless probing, her seductive pleas, designed to uncover the secret of Samson's strength. 3 times Samson lied, betraying pieces of his vulnerability, but never the full truth. Yet, each evasion was a step closer to the precipice, a testing of divine patience. He told her his strength would depart if he were bound with fresh bowstring, then with new ropes, then if his hair were woven into the loom. Each time he broke free, yet each time he was mocked, his weakness exposed, his sacred status cheapened. You feel the tension building, the creeping dread, as Delilah's persistence chipped away at his resolve. This was not merely a lover's quarrel. It was a spiritual battle, a direct assault on the divine covenant that empowered him. The lost context of ancient espionage and the role of female seductresses in weakening powerful men across many cultures underscores Delilah's calculated malevolence, making her a figure far more dangerous than a simple paramour. She was a professional handler, an enemy agent dedicated to destroying Israel's champion. Then came the fatal confession. Wearied by her daily nagging, his soul was vexed to death. And Samson, in a moment of profound weakness, revealed the truth. A razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my hair is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. You feel the profound weight of this utterance, the shattering of a sacred trust, the exposing of a divine secret to a profane enemy. This was not a physical act of shaving yet, but the confession of the secret behind his strength, the revealing of the very mechanism of his Nazirite consecration, which was the ultimate transgression. The moment his head was shaven while he slept on Delilah's lap was merely the inevitable consequence of his spiritual surrender. The physical act of hair removal was the outward manifestation of an inward collapse of his vow, a symbolic severing of his connection to the divine. You are told that the Lord had departed from him, a chilling statement that signifies the immediate, devastating consequence of breaking the Nazirite covenant. His strength, once godlike, vanished, and he became like any other man, blinded, bound, and grinding grain in a Philistine prison. The consequences for Samson were brutal and absolute. You witness his humiliation, his eyes gouged out, his divine power stripped away, his pride shattered. The very symbol of his strength, his hair, now lay discarded, his sacred separation brutally violated. The Philistines, once terrorized by his might, now mocked him, displaying him as a trophy in their temple of Dagon. This was not just personal suffering. It was a national catastrophe, a profound blow to the morale of Israel, whose champion had fallen not to superior arms, but to moral failure. The Nazirite vow, once a source of formidable power, became a testament to the terrible price of forgotten consecration. Rabbinic tradition often emphasizes the gravity of oaths, viewing vows made before God as absolutely binding, with severe spiritual repercussions for their violation. The fall of Samson serves as the ultimate illustration of this principle, demonstrating that divine favor, while freely given, is often maintained through human faithfulness to sacred commitments. You are left to consider the chilling question: was Samson's blindness a divine punishment, or simply the natural outcome of his own spiritual blindness, his inability to see beyond his immediate desires? The story of Samson forces you to confront a truly soul-searching question that reverberates through all of human experience. Is the divine power bestowed upon an individual always contingent upon their faithfulness to sacred mandate? Or can such power be so intrinsically linked to the individual that its loss represents a punitive act from God rather than a natural consequence of broken vows? You are compelled to consider the terrifying fragility of spiritual gifts when confronted by human frailty. Samson's narrative leaves you to wrestle with whether his suffering was an unavoidable consequence of his choices, a direct result of the breached covenant, or if it signifies a divine judgment, a specific and active removal of grace. For centuries, theologians and the faithful have debated the precise interplay between divine sovereignty and human free will in such dramatic form. Was it a test of his integrity, a test he failed spectacularly, or was it a demonstration of God's unwavering principle that sacred vows once made cannot be broken without severe, inevitable repercussion? The Nazirite vow, in its tragic unraveling through Samson, serves as a stark reminder that extreme devotion, when compromised, can lead to extreme devastation. It compels you to ask, what ultimate price is exacted when sacred separation gives way to profane satisfaction? The veil of history has been torn, revealing not just ancient customs, but eternal truths etched into the very fabric of existence. The Nazirite vow, in its profound demands for separation and purity, stands as an enduring testament to the human yearning for the divine, an attempt to bridge the chasm between the temporal and the eternal through acts of extreme devotion. Yet it also illuminates the perilous tightrope between consecrated power and the corrupting nature of human weakness. Samson's tragic fall is not merely a tale of strength lost, but a chilling reminder that divine empowerment is often a trust, a sacred burden, whose continuity is inextricably linked to the purity of the vessel that bears it. You are left with the indelible impression that while humanity strives for the divine also demands perfect adherence, and the consequences of compromising sacred pacts reverberate far beyond the individual, touching the very destiny of nations. This ancient vow, steeped in mystery and sacrifice, compels you to search within yourself for the delicate balance between devotion and humanity, between separation and integration. For in its paradox lies a profound understanding of the covenantal relationship between the Creator and the created.